Hi, welcome to this presentation. It aims to give you some handy hints that should help you prepare to get your head in the right space in order to get ready for your FTP process. There are many aspects that I certainly didn't realise when I went through the process, and things that I've learnt over the years from observing and representing at hearings. Hopefully things will change and improve, and if they do, the list will change too. First of all, here's some aspects that I think will be useful for you to know whilst your case is being investigated. Try to remember, although you are an expert in your profession, you are not an expert in FTP. Stick with what you're good at. Ensure you have representation to deal with what they're good at. Remember, it's important that you do learn about the FTP process, regulatory law, and why the NMC follow the process that they do, but you can't possibly be expected to understand all of the nuances associated with this. Leave that to your rep so that you can concentrate on getting your clinical evidence together to show what a good practitioner you are. Case representation is a key skill and one that takes many years to develop, sometimes decades. Focus on how to explain your clinical skill and leave your rep to do the legal. One thing I didn't realise until quite recently is that the NMC works on the basis of proving the allegations. When the allegations come in, there is an administrative process which looks to gather information from the referrer to back up the allegations. Their investigation is looking to whether they can prove allegations rather than determining a thorough investigation of the case history and all the facts. It is a risk assessment, and they risk assess if the case is likely to be proven should it go to hearing. They will also look to past and present employers to see if there is any additional information that they can gain to support the case, and to also see if there's been any other concerns along the way. As harsh as it may sound, try to remember that your case officer is not your friend. Although friendly and professional, your link person at the NMC is there to handle your case and nothing else. All of the conversations you have with your link person at the NMC are recorded, and a written summary is kept of the conversation, which may be presented at hearing. Make sure you are always professional in every conversation you have and every written piece of information you share with the NMC. If you ask your case officer information about the process, ask it via email so that you have proof of the advice that was given. Remember the age-old motto that we use in nursing: if it isn't written down, it didn't happen. So make sure that any telephone calls are followed up by you with a professional email summarising what has been discussed. But make sure anything that you disclose in these conversations really needs to be shared with the NMC. Make sure you've checked with your representative before you have any conversations with them. When you're going through a fitness to practice investigation, certain deadlines will be set by the NMC, such as returning your initial response form. People tend to get very worried if they don't adhere to these timeframes. Try not to panic, try not to pressure yourself. Timeframes given by the NMC can be changed, so don't be rushed to get the information into them by the deadlines given. If you need more time, tell them so, ask for an extension, and give them an expected time that you will send it in by. Quite often people feel that they've got to keep in favour with the NMC, that they've got to please their case officer, that they've got to respond to deadlines in the right way for fear that if they don't, this will have a negative impact on them. It's not the case. It's better to take your time rather than rush a response. Always make sure that you check with your rep before you disclose any information or before you put a response in. If you haven't got a rep, then ask on the NMC Watch group for others' advice to see if it's appropriate for you to put that submission in. Sometimes it is better to wait, see how the investigation progresses, and then wait to respond till later when you have all the information that the NMC have gathered. Obviously, it's better to give evidence to the NMC early because that might increase the chances of the case being closed early. But you can submit evidence to the NMC as late as the morning of your hearing. It's not ideal, and the NMC will say that it's not been particularly fair to them because they haven't had a chance to review it and summarise it. But the panel will allow this, especially if you're not represented. If you have an interim order in place, the interim order, as you know, is reviewed every 6 months, and it can continue for a maximum of 18 months. If the case hasn't concluded by then, the NMC will have to apply to the High Court for an extension. This is pretty routine. The NMC apply for hundreds of extensions throughout a period of a year. What people don't realise is that you can actually object to that extension request. The court will, of course, allow it because they can't interfere with the safety aspects that an interim order imposes. But it is important to think about this carefully. You don't have to consent to an interim order extension application, particularly if you feel that the NMC have been delaying for no particular reason other than their caseload. You can attend an interim order extension hearing and speak to the judge about the reasons you may have any objections to the NMC continuing that interim order for a further 18 months. It's unlikely that the judge will interfere, but they may suggest things such as reviewing the order within 28 days or only allowing 4 months, for example, rather than the 12 applied for. Another thing to think about is that the NMC should help you find missing evidence. If you no longer are at work where the incidents happened, you might not be able to get access to patient records, for example, or other documents that may support your case, such as rosters, appraisals, prescriptions, etc. You can put in writing to the NMC that you'd like this evidence found and disclose to you when they've got it. Give your case officer a list of documents that you feel would be helpful to get. Do this in writing and regularly ask for updates on the progress of this. Remember though, if there is anything in those documents that may count against you, these can be used by the NMC. So make sure that anything you're looking for is going to benefit you rather than harm your case. If the NMC say that they haven't been able to get these documents, present this to the panel, as they may be able to actually ask more questions or give the NMC more time to gather them. Along the timeline of your case management, the NMC must declare any unused materials, and they certainly must put this in front of a panel when it comes to a hearing. This is a list of documents that they feel aren't beneficial for their case, and they therefore don't want them put in front of the panel. You can then present your reasons why you think these documents are essential in order for the panel to make their decisions. The NMC should provide this information to you every time there's a hearing. They don't always do this, so it is important that you professionally challenge this aspect. You can then ask the panel for this evidence to be submitted and let them decide on its relevance. People often ask if they decide to just step away from the process, if they retire or have no intention of returning to practice. Does this mean that the case will stop? Unfortunately not. The case will continue until its conclusion, so you do need to engage with it or make appropriate steps to try and go for a consensual panel determination, which is when you agree with the NMC what the outcome will be, or ask for agreed removal. The case will continue to be investigated, but if you provide information about your intentions to never work again, you might be able to apply for agreed removal from the register. Don't assume that the NMC understand the clinical aspects of your case. Whilst they have 8 clinical advisors working for them across all sectors, and these clinical advisors are registrants, generally those investigating and preparing the cases are administrators, lawyers or paralegals. Paralegals are trainee lawyers. So any reflection or statement that you put in must help the NMC understand the clinical relevance of these things. You can now remove yourself from the register whilst a case is in progression. The agreed removal policy has now been updated. You don't have to agree to the allegations to do agreed removal anymore, and you can remove yourselves on health grounds. So think about this carefully. Be really sure though, because this means that you can't come back later. If you do apply for re-entry onto the register and before you came off you had a case that was open, the case will have only been paused, so when you apply to come back on it will be reopened. This is really important because it protects the public against people trying to use agreed removal as a way of avoiding process. Anyway, back to handy hints. It isn't a bad thing for your case to take time. Remember, the further away you are from events, the longer you've had to show that you are now fit to practice. This process is supposed to be about assessing your current fitness to practice and not punishing you for your past mistakes. So if your case has gone on for a long period of time, hopefully you've been able to secure work and then show that these things haven't recurred. We completely understand how frustrating it is that the length of time that fitness to practice investigations take is incredibly long, but as much as you want to get it over and done with, sometimes this can actually be better for you because it gives you more time to reflect, to learn, to get appropriate training in place, and also to secure work so that you can show that you've improved and you're a good practitioner. So use this time wisely. Quite often it's easy for us to just put our head in the sand and try and ignore the process if we've had long periods of time where we haven't heard from the NMC. Take control back and actually use this time positively. Think about the things that you can put in place, the training that you can do, for example, to really get on top of things. Once you have recovered from the shock of being referred, get your ducks in a row and get busy. Show the NMC that you are a safe practitioner. Courses, reflections, and all those important testimonials from colleagues are all vital to showing this. Remember, it's not personal. Although it may feel like it, it really isn't. This is a process like any other. Try to step back, treat it as professionally as you would with a patient interaction. If you made a mistake, own it. Remember, it's about learning and improving. Right, so let's think about when your case actually comes to a hearing. It is the NMC's job to prove their case, not yours to disprove it. Make sure you understand the 4 stages of a hearing. The NMC have to provide all their evidence in the facts stage to show they have presented enough for the facts to be decided upon by the panel. If the facts aren't proven, that's it, the case is closed. This is why it's really important not to give too much information too soon. Wait, listen, read stuff as it comes in, then respond when needed. Remember that the NMC and the panels are 2 separate bodies. A case presenter attends on behalf of the NMC. The panel are there, almost on behalf of the public if you like, to look at all the evidence from both sides and make a decision. It is up to you to put in front of the panel what you have to support your case. Do not assume that the NMC will have done this for you, especially if it conflicts with their version of events. The panel is not the NMC. The panel won't have had your evidence until at least day 1 of the hearing. Sometimes they don't receive it until the NMC have actually presented their case, so don't rush to get your bundle in early. Take your time, make sure it's right. It is your responsibility to ensure that the panel has all information in front of them when your case comes to them. This applies to both interim orders and full hearings. Check with your representative that they have physically ensured that the panel have all the information they need, or that you expect them to have. Don't assume just because you have submitted information to the NMC that this will make it to the panel. Ensure that prior to any contact with the panel that you have provided all information, past and present, for them to consider. With an interim order hearing, panels only focus on the risk that you may pose to the public today. The panels can then only assess a case based on what is in front of them, either orally or through live evidence or written. If you've had an interim order review hearing previously, it won't necessarily be the same panel hearing this one today. Therefore, you need to make sure that the panel has any evidence you put in last time, as well as new evidence this time, to support your good current practice. That way they can do a thorough risk assessment and make sure they're privy to all the facts. Again, with multiple interim order hearings, particularly if you've had 2 or 3 beforehand, build a picture each time of your learning and improvement since your last review. Show the panel your journey, the journey that you've come on, where you were at the beginning of process, where you were at the last review, and where you are now. This can be really powerful. Again, don't assume that the panel can understand clinical relevance of some information you're putting in front of them. So explain in writing why this piece of evidence is relevant. If there are missing documents that the NMC haven't put forward, it's up to you to make it clear to the panel so that they understand the relevance of their missing. You can change your decision on the charges at any point. On the first day of hearing, for example, you'll be asked if you deny or accept the charges. This is when you give your final response and when the final response is taken. So if you previously denied charges, but now, through the learning you've done, you realise that actually you need to accept some of them, it's fine to change your stance. You can also supply a reflection at any point. Some people only really start to understand their failings when they start to hear the NMC present their case. That's absolutely fine. Sometimes putting in a late reflection can show how that your insight has developed and can be helpful. The panel want to understand that you understand what went wrong. It doesn't matter how late you realise this, as long as you come to that realisation. Panels are changing and they are starting to challenge the NMC, but sometimes you might not get a neutral panel. So remember that if this does happen, you can appeal, and you should appeal if you feel that the panel haven't been fair or proportionate. Towards the end of 2024, in efforts to save money, the NMC moved from a transcription service, people that were employed to write absolutely everything discussed at the hearing accurately, word for word, to MS Teams recording. This has unfortunately caused no ends of problems around the accuracy of these transcripts. If you haven't got representation, or even if you have, try to take somebody with you that can take some really good notes, and then you can compare them later if you don't feel the transcripts are accurate. You can ask for the recordings of the hearing as well as the transcripts so that you can compare them both for accuracy. This isn't readily available, but it is available on request. So hopefully this has given you a good insight into the things you need to be thinking about when preparing for your hearing or going along the fitness to practice journey. Look at our website. There's lots of handy hints on there, lots of information about the different stages that you might need to consider and might need to learn about. In the meantime, take your time, talk on the group, lots of people on there that can help give you support and advice, and remember, get yourself some representation. Good luck.